if you want the videos and things.
That'll be great,
Editing it up.
Alex. That'll be great.
Aren't
We
you
are
just
live
so
today on
generous?
BerryFlow Upstream number 62. This one is going to be entitled Venice, and probably because that's mainly what we have for news this week. We did have an update to Bez 12 Cloud. BlackBerry is doing a sale on some of their devices. I actually picked up a device myself, a White Leap, on this 20% deal. So go out there, spend your money on BlackBerry 10, and then laugh at the irony of why we talk about Android for half this podcast. But I'm here today.
Just gonna be upfront about that one.
So you gotta be full disclosure, guys. I'm here today with a great cast. We have Brandon Orr up in Canada. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing pretty good. Can't complain. Sunny today.
Excellent. Good to have you on, man. Alex, how are you doing over there in Buffalo?
Doing good, going well. Just keeping busy, trying to at least.
Staying busy. As long as you're not getting into trouble, right?
Never.
And Chris, who's Crackberry's editor-in-chief. How you doing today, Chris?
I can't complain. I kind of slept my Sunday away, so it was very relaxing, and I woke up in time to come on here with you guys. So I'm all ready to roll.
At this point, it's probably your body's just probably learned like upstream time.
Yeah,
You actually wake
exactly.
up. I will say I kind of woke up just from a nap recently as well, so I'm totally understand where you're coming from on that. We got a lot to talk about, and I want to preface the entire conversation with half of what we are going to talk about is leak-based. So Chris put it perfectly in one of his recent posts on Crackberry. Everything at this point that we've seen is probably like rough draft stage. So take that as we continue our conversation here. But we've seen a lot about this Blackberry Venice device. We've seen software side, we've seen hardware side now. It's starting to shape up. I think the biggest news that dropped at the beginning of the week was that it was tweeted out by Evan Blaze that looks like it's going to hit all 4 carriers sometime in November. At least that's what the word is so far. What do you guys think about that in terms of how we've seen previous BlackBerry 10 launches? And really, we haven't seen a fully cohesive launch since like the Z10 2 years ago. So what are some of you guys' thoughts? Do you guys think this is something realistic that BlackBerry will be able to have this device out on all 4 carriers?
I think, in the past with BlackBerry 10, it was kind of always somewhat of a risk for a carrier taking it. Just like a lot of carriers will advertise the device, and if they spend all this money in advertising and take up store space and things, and no one buys it, then they kind of wasted their time. But with this, with Android and so many people excited for it, I think it's kind of like FOMO, fear of missing out. They don't want to not have it. If someone comes into Verizon and says, hey, I want that new BlackBerry Venice that's running Android, and Verizon has to say, we don't have it, I think they want to avoid that. So not surprised that everyone's going to take it, but it is a little bit surprising, seeing as it's not a normal thing for BlackBerry.
T-Mobile iPhone syndrome all over again. T-Mobile didn't have the iPhone for quite a while, and then it sort of exploded. They basically had to make some deals in order to make it happen. Same with all the other carriers that aren't AT&T. They had to make it happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brandon, what are some of your thoughts, man? Do you think it's gonna like hit some regions first, or that they're gonna have a global kind of day one, bam, here it is, or do you think it's gonna be a more layered experience?
I think it's going to be a bam, day one, here it is, because it's the first time BlackBerry, if it does pan out being an Android device, it's going to be the first time they bring it out, and really with the market, something different, because we've been kind of reaching a plateau here with handheld devices. Like, no one's really selling ginormous numbers anymore. I mean, Samsung's kind of feeling the pain now. We're at a plateau, and I think the carriers are just looking for anything that can like differentiate the product so that people might be enticed to go buy. And I think a lot of people, while we get a lot of fanboys who are kind of like, I'll be pissed off if like it doesn't run BlackBerry 10 if it runs Android. I think for every one of those people, there's a general person out there. There's like 5 or 6 general people out there who are willing to give BlackBerry a shot with Android. There's a lot of people I've been reading comments online on Engadget and stuff like that, where people are like, I'm really excited to try an Android BlackBerry device to have that physical keyboard, and A lot of
It
people
goes to
always,
show.
yeah,
Goes to show really where the market is headed right now. There's so much ubiquity out there with like all the touch screens, right? Everyone's got a touch screen device. So as you said, people are kind of getting excited. They're like, this is a different form factor for the same Android I use. So
yeah.
I'm at a point personally where I'm wondering if it's going to be received, right? There's obviously seems to be some interest for it, but again, how do you steer kind of the marketing message behind it? Like, why this device? Why a slider, and why now? Like, how would you guys vocalize that? Like, imagine you're selling this device to someone and trying to sell them on it. Like, what's your pitch? It's
It's
kind
an
of tough.
interesting one, especially especially when you become accustomed to essentially selling security. Like, let's be realistic, that's what BlackBerry does. They basically sell the idea of security at this point with their consumer handsets, which has done them well. It's served them well in the past, but there's also that aspect that people don't really genuinely care about security. They kind of care about security when it's like a little bit too late. You know, everybody reads all these horror stories online recently. Everybody gets upset about them, but then the next day they don't really do anything about it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to continue that exact same message. Like, are you going to continue with saying that you've gone ahead and secured Android, or are they just going to totally play it out to the consumer brand at this point? I think hitting the consumer point of it all would probably be their best thing, but you know, that almost creates a mixed message, because what we've heard from John Chen and essentially BlackBerry over the past few months is that they're a software and services company. They're not looking to even really bother with consumers. So I don't even know what the pitch could be on that. Like,
Yeah,
you could sell a lot of consumers on the idea of it being Android and coming with a physical keyboard. Like, if that was me, that would be the message that I would be putting out. But it's not cohesive to BlackBerry's current message. Like, if this device actually does appear and it comes up, it's like, how do you sell that?
Yeah,
yeah.
they've got to have something there that's like work, you know? Like
Yeah.
there has to be some kind of reason, like why is the screen curved? Like why is there a keyboard on it? And on some of what we've seen
Yeah.
so far, we saw the four slides kind of put into a cube with BlackBerry Hub on Android, what basically looks like Miracast or Chromecast from a BlackBerry to different devices, a content transfer for BlackBerry, and as well Google Play. All of these envisioned on the Venice device. So if that's what they're going for, it does seem like it's going to be a pretty kind of substantial Google experience. And Alex has put it on screen for us here.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's a weird thing though because like think of like when in their advertising, something that they at least when they did advertise occasionally with BlackBerry 10, they would advertise the hub. Like that was kind of a big deal for the phone. So it's like, do they go and advertise the Venice with the hub and things? But it's like, well, if you can use the hub on any Android device and any, iPhone eventually, then do you really advertise that when you're advertising a device, or do you completely disregard that whatsoever? Because that's a software, it's not the hardware. So if you're selling the actual hardware, all you can really focus on is, the keyboard, the slide mechanism, the curved screen, the specs. I think they'd really have to cut out the BlackBerry. I mean, if you can get the BlackBerry experience on any Android device, which is what they're obviously planning to do, whether or not it's going to be right out the box or whatever happens with it, do you focus on the BlackBerry experience? Do you focus on the device? Do you focus on both? Like, what do you do?
Uh, okay. One question. One thing I'm just trying to figure out is like this obviously inevitably is going to bring up the question of the BlackBerry Enterprise Suite or BlackBerry App Suite when we look at this. And the way I look at it is that they've got these phones coming out, and it seems to be like the only thing the main thing that's going to really differentiate this device is going to be the fact that it's a BlackBerry build, and also those BlackBerry apps that BlackBerry is going to build for Android. But then it begs the question of, what's the ongoing maintenance of those apps going to be? Is it just something to get people acquainted with Android, and then eventually it's going to kind of, in the future they're going to kind of get like leaned off of it and just go straight to the Android aspect of it, or is there a more long-term goal with this app suite, because I'm not quite sure right now, based on the information that we have, exactly what they're planning to do. A subscription model? I don't know, man. Like if I'm
Yeah,
going
it's tough for
Android and I
sure.
have the option to use a free alternative, I mean, as much as I love the hub, I mean, it's going to have to be a pretty competitive subscription model if they want me to fork out money for these apps, right? So I mean, they've got some legwork to do. Even if people do pick up this phone, I inevitably see it as being a hardware purchase, and then the software game, which what we've been talking about for like the past 6 months, is essentially, oh, BlackBerry's becoming a software company, and this move essentially makes them a hardware company instead of a software company,
Yeah.
right?
Basically,
In my
it's
view.
Chen like doesn't want to fail, you know. He really doesn't want this business to go under for BlackBerry, especially when he's had such a short time here. He played out the year. He saw how it went. He's like, okay, these are the changes that need to happen, and that's what we're seeing now. Alex
It's
has got on screen for us the actual keyboard of the device, which was shown off in a leak that followed up. It looks like a BlackBerry keyboard, right? Ooh, ah. I was kind of concerned, are there going to be frets, and would you guys care if they're not frets on the device? Does it?
I
Do you think it's going to
I
matter to
I
you?
find that a really funny question because a lot of people are blowing up about that, and it's like, well, what are frets? Frets, kind of in a way, like spacing in between. Sure, there's not like the standalone little strip there, and I guess is that the definition of a quote unquote fret? Like, what is the fret? Because like there's spacing there. I guess like doesn't that mean that there's frets, or is it because there's no little slice off here, and this probably isn't metal? Does that mean that's not a fret? Like,
Yeah.
what is a fret? Because
Yeah, I thought the
A fret
fret was the
technically for the
slice off.
guitar is where you're actually going to hold down the string to create the vibration that makes the sound. So really, it doesn't parlay well to a BlackBerry, a
yeah.
BlackBerry keyboard device that really doesn't have that kind of functionality on it.
Yeah, I thought the frets were actually, in like my opinion, I thought the frets were the sliced off part that
Mhm.
gave people that added accuracy. Like they had a part that would point out just so that it'd be easier to touch instead of a flat surface, requiring you to apply pressure to the entire button surface area. If you have like a pointed part at the tip, you only have to apply pressure on that small point, instead of needing to apply it across the entire button. And that's why I thought kind of gave it that better user feeling when you're typing on a BlackBerry, in my opinion. I'm not sure if it's right or not.
Can
And
I
Chris,
just say that people are totally ignoring the fact that the BlackBerry Q5 didn't have any frets and pretty much looked identical to this keyboard
Yeah.
anyway?
Hmm.
Just saying.
But did anybody actually ever use a Q5? We don't know yet, you know.
I
Well,
think
I
some
mean,
people who
people
got
use
it
them.
actually liked it. I think it was
Yeah,
actually a decent device.
just
also,
no one got an opportunity to use it.
also, people have become accustomed to seeing the frets, but it's not as if there wasn't any BlackBerry devices that never had the frets. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Because yeah, I just pointed to essentially the Q5 as a device that didn't have frets, but also the BlackBerry Curve 8320 didn't have frets. The BlackBerry Curve 8300 didn't have frets. All of these the whole Curve series never had frets. Frets are something that came with the BlackBerry Bold series. So it's not as if that is ever a device out there that didn't have frets. The very first BlackBerries ever produced didn't have frets. Things change. It's just the way it
It's
is.
funny because if you really look at it, you really want to like just make a joke out of it.
Yeah.
The BlackBerry 10 virtual keyboards have frets, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So arguably the slider does have frets, just not on the keyboard pictured, you know. But these are the two devices, and as Chris mentioned earlier, they do look basically identical. I mean, you're gonna have a little bit added in. There was another leak that followed the keyboard leak that actually showed off what looked like the zero button, which also has a microphone, also having a three-dot overflow, which would match up and pair well with what we already know is the three-dot overflow within BlackBerry native applications that has existed on Android for quite a long period.
Yeah, that's the other thing. There's so many people that are focused on these two different keyboards. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be focused on them, but using it as a point to go ahead and say, oh, well, that's not real, isn't necessarily the best argument in that case, because, you know, that overflow menu is pretty much used in everything these days. It's like the hamburger menu, the overflow menu. It's all over the damn
Yeah.
place.
You have to have a settings gunner, so all that stuff can
Yeah,
happen.
and at the same time, I do want to acknowledge it because of the fact that it could possibly mean that they are implementing some sort of mechanism to be able to go ahead and open the menu directly from the keyboard when you're using the keyboard and the device is, slid open. That's not unreasonable, but that doesn't necessarily point to anything else. It's just a three-dot menu. If I was trying to access something, and you're telling people that you can use the keyboard, it just makes logical sense to have this button on the damn keyboard as well.
Yeah.
Do you guys mind if I ask a question? This might be a silly or serious question, but depending on how you view it. But considering they're going to be making these apps, if it is an Android device, they're going to be making the Hub, Calendar, and what was the other one? Contacts. And it looks like probably a BlackBerry 10 keyboard for Android. What experiences from BlackBerry 10 do you think would be the hardest for the team to achieve? Other than the obvious gestures like home gestures and stuff like that, what other aspects do you think would be difficult to bring that BlackBerry 10 experience? Because I'm thinking it's mostly going to be those gestures that are going to be the tough things. A lot of the other stuff is just essentially they've built good apps for BlackBerry 10 users to use with some good integration. But I was really thinking about it, and I'm thinking they could bring maybe 90% of what makes those use cases on those apps. They could, if they really put in the time and effort on these Android apps, they could really bring it over.
My main concern is just basically the BlackBerry Hub. I don't fully understand how they can implement the BlackBerry Hub in such a way that they do on BlackBerry 10, because on BlackBerry 10 they maintain a lot of control over what APIs and stuff like that are accessible, for better or worse, because obviously we know that the Twitter application is essentially built by BlackBerry. The Facebook is, they have some say over what goes over that, and basically they have access to those things to be able to say, okay, you need to include this in order for it to be accessible through the hub. If they make a jump to Android, they obviously don't have that exact same accessibility unless they're directly working with these partners to be able to go ahead and pull that same stuff in on an Android solution. So my main concern is how do they implement the BlackBerry Hub the way that they do on BlackBerry 10 on Android, when it they may not necessarily have the exact same sort of relationships with these developers,
Yeah, there's so many apps within the hub currently on BlackBerry 10 that I'm using that, think about Pushbullet. So it's not going to be natively in the hub. Pushbullet would probably have to integrate an extension, if BlackBerry even allows for it, to access the hub. The hub kind of becomes fragmented then. If I'm using the hub for Facebook, Mail, Twitter, and a few other things, and then it's well, then you have to use the native, notification method of Android for other things like Pushbullet or Instagram or whatever else. So
Alex,
yeah.
The way I'm viewing it is I know Pebble and Android. What's the Android equivalent of their wearables? What's it called?
Android Wear.
Android Wear. I know there's an API in Android that lets developers have access to all your notifications and messages that come from those notifications. So I don't see any difficult from them getting those apps to show up in the hub like we see right here in these examples. I don't see any difficulty from that aspect. I think the biggest difficulty is going to be from the interaction aspect, being able to reply to stuff straight from the hub. I think it's essentially going to just send you to the app as if it was a notification center. So
you think right here, if you click on Twitter, for instance, you think that it's not going to do an overlay? It's going to actually just switch you over to the Twitter app?
Twitter app. Yeah, it's going to send you to the Twitter app. I
think Android has had some invocations, like the layer on top. Some apps allow for that, though, where you could be in one app and then you can invoke another app to go over it. I know that's something that we take for granted on BlackBerry 10, but I do think in some forms I'd really be amazed if they didn't, get similar functionality going with the hub.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they can't do it. I'm just saying that like I don't know how they're gonna if it's gonna be as feature rich as what it is on BlackBerry 10,
Yeah.
or if it's just gonna be like I don't know, like let's say for example they're basically hijacking the Android notifications to create the hub. That's pretty much the only way that I can think of how they would actually implement it.
Yeah.
Rather than getting regular notifications from Android, you're basically hijacking the notifications for the apps and then pushing them directly to the hub. If that
So
makes
like,
sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if you pull down from the top, are you still gonna see? Are you gonna have duplicates of all of these
Yes.
notifications?
Yeah,
I think
that's
so.
what I
I think
feel
so.
is going to happen.
And here's where it comes to me, guys. I think it's honestly, and this is hopeful that BB10 is still a viable thing going forward here, right? Because we really don't know what's going to happen with BB10. Are they going to develop it on the side, keep it enterprise focused, or where they're going to go with their OS offering as a core product and service? But if they go forward, is it going to really be a full-fledged device, as Chris mentioned? Like, it's going to basically be a gateway drug to BlackBerry 10. It's like, I like what I'm kind of getting here on this Android device, yet BlackBerry 10 still is kind of like the best experience you can get for productivity and whatnot. So, do you guys think it's going to have any lead over people looking at an Android device, run with BlackBerry software, and then jump to maybe real BlackBerry software, like all the way?
No.
No.
I think those Android users will adopt Android
Yep.
based BlackBerry and like they'll either love it or they'll hate it. It's going to be one of those things. They'll be like BlackBerry really screwed up on this, or they'll be like BlackBerry really did good on this, and I like what they're offering, and then they'll continue to stick with it. I don't think anybody's going to jump from an Android device to a BlackBerry 10 device. That's just not going to happen because they've been missing out so much.
I mean, let's call a spade a spade. I mean, this is just they're throwing things at the wall. They're just trying to have a shot here with Android, like bringing out a device, trying to just like differentiate it a bit and see if they can get some profit from hardware. And if it doesn't work out, then I think they're just going to leave the whole game, because if their plan is to start building like Android software and apps, you don't need to have hardware. You don't have to have your skin in the game and hardware to provide that functionality, to provide that gateway drug type of feeling that James was talking about. You can provide those apps on existing hardware, so that like they're not mutually connected in this case. And so I think it's just them trying to see if they can make profit using hardware. If they can't, I fully believe they're just going to drop hardware altogether. Maybe keep BlackBerry 10 for super secure instances.
I've had the same kind of thought. Is this kind of security that BlackBerry offers with BlackBerry 10, is this really something that a consumer even needs, right? This really is something tailored for like a government and a top corporation, right? So why is this in the hands of general consumers? Like, there should be a more consumer option for some of those users. I'm still of the camp, though, that BlackBerry 10 is fine for me. Like, I don't need the apps. I really don't need Google going through my data. I'm pretty okay with BlackBerry 10 right now. Aside from those couple apps, I mean, it has an Android runtime. I mean, could performance be better? Yes, but I'm pretty satisfied with it. It sounds to me like most of you guys are going to go make that jump officially when it happens, just to try it out at least. Do you guys think you're honestly going to stick with it? Do you think it's going to be good enough?
Again, that's obviously something we're gonna have to see, but I have a good enough feeling, because BlackBerry is a large company. Like they've been in the game for a while now. They're not stupid. I feel like if they are fully changing their strategy to go over and be kind of an Android, not a fork, but a launcher kind of thing, I think they're gonna work really, really hard to get it working to a level that people who are used to BlackBerry will appreciate. Maybe I have too much faith in them, but realistically, I think. But really though, like if they are seriously focusing on this, and if it's like rather than having to spend all of your time building a complete OS, you're just focusing on like 4 apps, like Calendar, Hub, Contacts, or even 3 apps, whatever it may be. Just focusing your efforts on 3 apps as opposed to entire OS, I think they're going to be able to really refine it and probably even get some functionality better than what we're used to on BlackBerry 10, because they just have less to focus on.
Do you guys
Yeah,
think
for
these
sure.
apps are going to be available to everyone? Like, I could go in the store under BlackBerry's account and find them, or do you think it's going to be attached to a Bez, the productivity suite that we're seeing, and then
Oh
you have to buy
gosh.
our hardware if you want it otherwise. So if you don't want those services,
There-
you think it's going to be everywhere.
Yeah, it's gonna be
There's-
way too complicated.
Yeah. They're a software company, right? That's what they're saying. If you're a software company and you start tying your software to hardware, like what they did with BlackBerry in the past, then
BBM.
that's not what they're thinking about.
BBM all over again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think they're not
That would
stupid
be
now.
a
They've learned
terrible
from their
idea.
mistakes. Yep.
Plus, you know, even if I don't think that they could totally lock it down in the way that they have in the past, because we all know that APK files work entirely differently and can be extracted and so on.
Yeah.
All it takes is the right people to look at that code, and that whole premise just gets kind of shot. But
I think, James, when you ask me if, and I think most of us here can probably agree to this, when you ask us whether we're going to jump over when it comes out, I mean, like we all talk about BlackBerry. We do this. We live and breathe BlackBerry. So obviously we're going to get the newest product that they have like that. And
we're kind of obligated to.
We're not obligated to,
Yeah,
but we're obviously
I gotta.
we're obviously going to be there and, you know, trying to see what's new about it and take their word for it and see what they're going to bring us. But I think that's a general bias that we have here. I think most people, it's just only time will tell whether they're going to actually.
I bought a BlackBerry 10 device. I invested hundreds of dollars, on Shop BlackBerry to get an experience, to get those apps already. Yet you're gonna sell me a device that has the same stuff, same hardware, but so to speak, but downgrade the software experience and take things away from me. Like Chris said, it's all about how it's gonna be executed. And if they don't replicate BB10 well, I don't care. I really don't. I'm gonna stick with BB10. I'll have it on the side. I'll play with it, whatever. But I'm still gonna run daily on a BB10 probably.
I think that's the
I
other.
just don't see enough
thing.
motivation to move over.
I think that's the other thing is that everybody, once this news started circulating, everybody figured that BlackBerry 10 was gonna disappear. Well, unfortunately, BlackBerry 10, I shouldn't say unfortunately. That's not the right word. I was going to say unfortunately BlackBerry 10's not going to disappear, but that's not the right word. That's not what I want to say. Fortunately, BlackBerry 10 isn't going to disappear, and all of your devices that you previously purchased are obviously still going to work, just like BlackBerry OS. Now, that's where I say unfortunately, because I would like to see BlackBerry OS just totally disappear. But, whatever. BB10's obviously going to continue, and they still have some commitments to fill there to all of the people who have bought BlackBerry 10 devices. So it's not going to totally just disappear. You can't wipe it off the face of the earth. If you could do that, then I believe that they probably would have did that with BlackBerry OS a long time ago.
Your device gets sucked of its software soul, and it's just a brick now.
Let's not forget, as far as I know, this is all leaked information, but none of it is 100% confirmed yet.
Yeah, and that's part of the other thing is that people start seeing all this information and they draw their own conclusions, and there's a certain level of responsibility there with that, because obviously blogs and stuff like that are putting that information out there. As much as we try and say that it's a rumor, it's not confirmed, there are people who see this stuff and they're like, that's it, BlackBerry's done, I'm not buying no devices. All you have to do is take one look through the BlackBerry forums, and you can see people are already upset about it, right? Some are loving the idea, some are absolutely hating the idea, some are ready to just basically leave BlackBerry tomorrow. But
you look outside of the BlackBerry forums and you see great things. So
yeah,
it's
people are genuinely excited that this device could possibly exist. Even on Android Central, I did the Android Central podcast the other day. And, Jerry Hildenbrand over at Android Central is actually excited to have this device appear because of the fact that he, most people don't know it, but he used to use a BlackBerry Curve years ago before he started getting into Android. And he still tells me to this day it was one of his favorite devices because of the fact that it was simple and it was easy to use. And, it did everything that he needed it to. And if he lost it while he was going fishing, then he didn't have to worry about it. And now now that he's into the Android world, he's excited to see what BlackBerry has to offer. And he's not the only one. The comments on Android Central and various other Android sites have been very positive and receptive to it.
I think that people have used BlackBerry in the past, which a very large majority of people in general have used BlackBerry at one point in time, whether it was a Curve or whatever. And when they had that device, they probably experienced part of the BlackBerry experience. So, when people think BlackBerry, it's kind of a negative connotation, but it's also a positive connotation that's
Yeah.
like, I do miss that device a little bit. So it's like when you hear not, oh, BlackBerry built a new OS and it's going to be interesting, because that's not enough. If it's like, hey, an Android user and I'm thinking about buying the next phone with all these Samsung Galaxies coming out now this time of the year, and they hear, wait, BlackBerry's making an Android phone, they will
Alex,
actually like feel feel something about that.
Alex, that's exactly how people were feeling leading up to the BBM launch. Like a lot of people were like, you know what? Like I sent my first few messages like
Yeah.
over mobile when I was in high school over BBM. Like I'm so excited to have it back. Of course, we all saw what happened with the BBM launch.
It was a
Yeah.
terrible
You know,
launch. The way they
water under the
handled it,
bridge
though.
now.
But
Yeah.
those are the emotions that BlackBerry needs to invoke in people.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
it's realistically what is missing from BlackBerry right now. BlackBerry does not have that love that they once had. It's still there in the background, but it's basically because people are looking at it as, oh, it's a BlackBerry device, and the OS still isn't up to par with the other offerings. As soon as you put something that basically puts them on par with the other offerings, people start to remember. They look back and they're like they start to remember the positive things about BlackBerry, and that gives them the idea like, hey, maybe this whole Android thing could work, and maybe I really do miss the keyboard, and maybe BlackBerry could actually pull this off because you no longer have that app ecosystem to worry about. You no longer have the BlackBerry limitations that were there previously to worry about. Unless you're a storm owner, and then chances are you probably never want to look at another BlackBerry device again. You know,
It's that reversal of fortune that I think BlackBerry is headed toward right now. It's
Yeah.
like we had a native OS with a little bit of Android. Now we have an Android OS with a little bit of BlackBerry. And
Yeah.
it's literally just totally just switched the formula, and they're going to see how it works for them. And I think honestly, as you guys have said already, the receptivity seems to be up there. Can they execute it? Will it come out right? And will it ultimately bring the core user base they have? Will it bring them over? We've seen a lot of stuff going around about a Passport 2.
Oh, come on.
I can't even get my head around it. I think at this point we're seeing Android on a Passport.
Yeah,
For
you're
testing
not,
reasons.
you're not seeing a Passport 2, you're seeing a Passport for testing reasons, as James said.
Yeah, so,
Why else would you be running it on, like, a Silver Edition? Why? It doesn't make sense, right?
I mean, if they were to launch something in the future, I would hope it would have a little bit more differentiation than just that. But Alex has some of the images loaded up here. This kind of leads us into a conversation about some APKs that were also leaked to be running on the Venice. You can imagine maybe some of the apps are going to be the same. We see BlackBerry Safeguard, a contacts app, of course, something called Email that kind of almost looks like the BlackBerry Hub icon that we have on the device. We've seen the APK link show BlackBerry Buy, BlackBerry Launcher, and a couple other applications as well.
Docs2Go.
Yeah, Docs2Go is on there as well. I mean, Docs2Go has been on Android, really.
Yeah.
So.
Docs2Go is already an Android app, but it is
Yeah.
interesting that it appears there.
And
And I'm-
then,
And then with
I'm-
the camera, and I really like the BB10 camera for a lot of reasons. I wonder with better software on the back end if you're not even going to get an even better, like, I love the little peak camera and things like that, and the quick share and delete. Whether we're going to see some of that stuff trickle down, I don't know. Maybe they're just reinvesting some of their core assets onto Android, and that's as far as it'll go. But for me, what I'm looking at right now just looks weird. It doesn't look natural, right?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It really just seems awkward, and BB10 is built in such a way that it just makes sense the way the whole OS moves together. And from what at least we've seen so far, it really doesn't look like it's a cohesive thing. On a slider device, I can see it. I can definitely see it. But it doesn't look like this is going to be a standard kind of experience, right? Definitely not a stock Android experience on the slider if it does come out as such.
No, and I don't think anybody was really expecting that, right? Like, nobody expected just BlackBerry to throw out a straight-up Android device without no customizations at all, did they?
it's funny because
Honestly,
people take
man,
what they
like,
see, and what they see is a device that has 0 BlackBerry apps on it rendered on the screen, right? So
Yeah.
they're like, oh, so it's they're running
like
stock Android, and of course we know
you, you,
better.
you know what though? I mean, like from a business perspective, that might not even be like, in all seriousness, that might not even be such a bad
No.
decision if you think about it. Like, they don't have to spend any resources on the software. They're already making hardware that's not selling. If they just flash it with the Android OS and make sure the keyboard works, um, they're providing an Android device, which apparently everybody has been asking for, the market has been asking for, and it has that iconic keyboard that BlackBerry is known for, which
The,
people seem to really
As we're
want. So I
talking
mean,
about
like in
this
terms
right
of
now,
business,
as we're talking about it right now, I'm watching a video of it on the device right now, and it's like a 10-minute long video.
Brandon, you bring that
So
up,
it's awesome.
and I think it's a weird thing with that though, because like, well, that kind of makes you a hardware manufacturer, because hardware manufacturers don't really care about the software running on it
yeah.
for the most part, and then it's like BlackBerry doesn't want to be a hardware manufacturer, and you can start creating fragmentation. It's like, oh, you have a BlackBerry device, oh, and it runs pure Android, vanilla Android. That's a little bit weird. Whereas if someone says, oh, you have a BlackBerry device, oh, it has like the hub and it has a BlackBerry launcher. Oh, that's interesting. Just like when you buy whatever phone and it's running CyanogenMod, like
Oh,
that's kind of like the
but like
Here's a,
I'm almost looking at it from like a freedom of mobility kind of solution where like you buy the hardware and you
yeah.
can choose what OS you want to put on it. Like if they were to go and be like on Shop BlackBerry, you can buy the passport and you can choose what OS you want. You know how much of a revolution, like in terms of mobile, like OSs on mobile devices, that's going to be? That would be huge. If people
yeah.
could have the choice to pick what they want to use on their device,
That would be
then
interesting.
I
you
don't
know,
disagree with that, but I also find problems in maintaining that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
yeah,
Because you have to think of the customer service side aspect of that. If somebody goes ahead, let's say for example, I go ahead and I buy a passport running. Well, let's use a Venice instead. Don't want to continue with the passport nonsense as of yet. Um, let's say I buy a Venice and I go to Shop BlackBerry and I say that I want Android on it. Okay, and I get this device and it's not exactly all it's cracked up to be, and I change my mind, and now I want to go ahead and load BlackBerry 10 onto it. Do they provide me with a path to be able to upgrade it to, well, not even upgrade. Did they provide me with a path to be able to change it
Yeah.
directly from my house, or do I have to send my device back? What's the scenario there? As
I
as
think
much
that's huge.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
as much as I love Brandon's idea to be able to go ahead and do that, and it would be revolutionary because nobody else has done it as of yet, it also provides a lot of problems that could arise from that situation because people, everybody knows how people are. We're people ourselves.
Yeah.
We
Change your
we
mind on a
change our
daily
mind.
basis.
Yeah, as soon as the next shiny thing comes along, we're on top of that and
Yeah.
forget whatever else was out.
If Android LM and if Android N comes out and people are running the Venice, do they like, well, I want to develop or put the developer preview of N on my device because I'm anxious, and it's like, well, you can't do that because you're running the BlackBerry device, and then it starts getting this whole weird thing just because you want to test something out, and then obviously you probably can't be throwing around a bunch of different operating systems on it because that's rooting it, and then that's like, well, BlackBerry security, like the whole point of this is supposed to be they secured Android to an extent. So if you're going throwing around operating systems, well, that's not really securing Android. I don't know.
Also, to Brandon's point about like just offering a pure vanilla Android device, let's just roll with this and say what if BlackBerry was to actually go ahead, release the Venice as basically a pure Android device, put it on the market and say here it is. It's nothing but stock Android, and then they charged you essentially for the BlackBerry experience, like we've seen, what seems to be their intent. They want to basically go ahead and charge people for these productivity suites through the BlackBerry Experience Suite. What if they just threw out a pure Android device, and
Hmm.
then if you wanted the BlackBerry Experience, you got to pay for like the app or whatever. You got to pay. You got to buy a Bez in order to get that.
I'm so conflicted with the thought process like that in two ways. Like I love it in one way, but then the next it's like security, like to get everyone using the hub and rely, like, oh, I love the hub. If you charge even $1 for it, you know
Yeah.
so many people are going to be turned off by it. So
Yep.
do you go by the user base, which right now everyone's focusing on users. So if BlackBerry can say, oh, we have 300 million users using the hub software, then there might be some benefit to that. But then it's like, when do you ever make money? What does that benefit from you? That doesn't mean people are going to go and buy BlackBerry hardware now. Like, it's so, like, I'm really interested to see what they decided to do with this BlackBerry experience and how
I
they're going to
honestly
make
think
money.
the
making
smartest way to go
profit.
about it is, if you want the BlackBerry experience, you have to buy our Android hardware. Otherwise, get it through the Bez as an add-on
Get
service to
get
the
it through the
customer that may
Bez,
actually buy it.
but
Yes.
get it through the Bez, or can you at least buy it, like have it for like a $10 a year thing, and you get all of it through the Android, Google Play Store. Like, do you really want to just pigeonhole your customers and say get BlackBerry or you can't get it unless you get on Bez? Some people might not know how to get on Bez or want to get on Bez, but they just want the BlackBerry experience. I
Then
feel
buy
like it's not a
buy the
smart.
BlackBerry Android.
It's just not a smart
Yeah,
software company move though at
yeah.
It's
all.
so
So you
it's
want it
so
like
damn
BBM
messed up.
meetings where it's just everywhere and subscription based, right?
Kinda, like, it seems like the only, as a software company, I feel like it's the only thing that really makes sense. But then,
The
I don't know.
profitability aspect of all this is definitely a big question mark at this point. We don't know
The
what
whole
model they're
damn
going to use.
situation is a
Um,
question
Yeah.
mark.
let's be frank here. I mean, this has been a question mark for quite a long time already. I mean,
Since the
this isn't new
playbook.
news. Like App Suite hasn't been a new news for a while now, and it's still a big question mark how a lot of these things are going to come to play. I mean, it was a question mark before BBM meetings came out, and that came out, and it was a subscription-based model, which also had kind of some weird things around that as well. How, for instance, like the subscription was user, it was tied to one user, but one user could have a subscription and have four other users, whatever, in that same chat who don't need a subscription. So there was some confusion about it from that aspect, right? I'm sure there's going to be confusions with this new app suite coming out, but once again, I just don't see how they're gonna do it. Because on one hand, they wanna get people. I mean, if they're coming out with this hardware, they want to get people to purchase this hardware. At the same
Right.
time, they're putting all these resources into the software, so they want to be able to have people purchase this software. But you don't want to shut down avenues for people to obtain one or the other, right? Which it almost works counterintuitively in one sense, because if the software is that good, you want it to be an incentive for people to buy the hardware. In which case you wouldn't sell it standalone. So it's an interesting thing, and it's a big question mark, and we'll just see how it goes. But
Dude, you can say it. It's all fracked up.
it's very
It's all fracked
like
up.
I'm not gonna lie, like Chen, like his whole strategy is just very cloak and dagger, and yet, like, what's it been, like a year and a half or like 2 years since he's joined?
Yeah, he's going on 2 years.
Going on 2 years.
Actually,
And I still have
I
not
think that
seen
comes up
any
in November.
concrete, like I haven't seen any concrete path forward. Like definitely things feel a lot more positive than they were, 2 years ago when the stock price was at like $5. But I mean, I don't have any concrete idea of what their path going forward really is, especially in this side of the game. Which is arguably the only thing that anybody who's been following them from before he came on really cares about, realistically.
I'm honestly exhausted from all this talk. Like, I'm not even gonna lie.
Yeah.
Like, there's not much in this world that gets me exhausted. In like, just in the grand scheme of things for like the tech world. But I'm honestly exhausted from discussing this whole Android stuff because of the fact that there has been very little to go on in terms of actual concrete information. Like, there's so many people that bombard me with questions and emails and stuff like that, and it's like nobody knows. Like Brandon said, he's all very cloak and dagger about everything, and they're realistically, when you look at the grand scheme of it, even with all of these leaks that are coming out and all these little glimpses and stuff like that, it still offers us no concrete information as to what BlackBerry's actual plan is.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Because
in,
it's
in the
switched so
leaks, it
much.
seems to all be like carrier side. So it's BlackBerry trying to promote to the carrier to support the device, right? So again, it's tailored toward that end and what it can do, and we're not really seeing what the actual cleaned up, polished marketing is going to look like. And hopefully there is some. I mean, I'd assume you want to get your carrier partners to invest some money in it, just like we saw some commercials roll out with different carrier branding at the end of it. Do you guys think, at least for BlackBerry 10, that we're going to stop seeing the commercial support of it going further? I mean, we have them talking about 10.3.3, but do you guys see any like big update coming in BlackBerry 10's future, and why? Do you think
No.
it's going to be an
No.
Android endeavor here out?
Look, I mean, at this point, I think what we have now, I know for a fact that they've gone ahead and they sort of toss it out there as like a little bone to BlackBerry 10 users that 10.3.3 exists. However, there's pretty much virtually no information about that OS. It hasn't shown up in analytics. It's not even showing up in download reports. Like even today, I looked at the CB10 app downloads for like the past month, which gives you, any developer knows, it gives you a listing of like the downloads, the number of the downloads. It gives you a listing of the devices that they all came from. No personal information, but the OSs that it's running. There's nothing there in regards to 10.3.3. There's no breakdown. I heard rumors that there was essentially possibly some devices that were showing up. In over 30,000 downloads of the CB10 app, there is not a single sign of any new devices. There's not a single sign of any new operating systems that are being pushed out.
Yeah.
So, everything at this point in regards to BlackBerry 10 seems like it's pretty much at a standstill. Now, if you were to go through the BlackBerry forums, whatever, there are developers out there saying that they've communicated with BlackBerry in terms of like, okay, this item is specifically fixed in 10.3.3. However, where is it? There's no sign of it. The development processes have essentially all stopped at this point. There's tools that are reaching end of life right now. There's the whole Qt thing where Qt isn't even essentially moving forward. Qt Creator, which helps BlackBerry 10 developers go ahead and create apps, no longer even supports BlackBerry 10. They dropped it with the last update. Granted, that was not an official BlackBerry supported tool or anything like that, but literally they took the support out of Qt Creator because there was no maintainer for the actual BlackBerry 10 side of things. So obviously, these things are stalling at this point in time. I don't know how much more could get laid out in terms of BlackBerry 10 support that could be placed on hold. Like it seems as though that everything has pretty much reached a standstill in regards to BlackBerry 10 support at this point. And
Yeah,
like I said, there are plenty of people out there who will argue with me and say that I'm absolutely wrong, that there are things going on. However, we're not seeing them in any sort of grand capacity. So where is it?
Just look at the beta. Like we brought this up before. Look at what's going on in the beta. They introduced this big, BB10 beta, and there has not been an actual update that's been significant in the slightest bit in so long. And even when there was, it was like such a minor maintenance, like fixed a few bugs or like one bug or whatever. They're really not pushing anything with these updates. And then like look at the contacts app, for instance. Like it still has quite a bit, bugs. And people bring up too, like, is this going to have the BlackBerry 10 experience? Is this Android phone, is going to have the BlackBerry 10 experience like the contacts? Are they going to, if they have more time to focus on contacts, will they be able to get a better experience on Android for contacts app than they will even have on BB10? Because they're not updating the BB10 contacts app. So like if they're focusing their efforts on the calendar and the hub and everything, I think we're going to start getting a better experience on Android for these individual apps in some capacity.
Yeah.
And that's just a really weird thing to experience.
And the tools,
BBM right now,
the tools on Android are getting significantly better each and every single time. Like,
Yeah,
all of these apps, all of these ecosystems like iOS and Android are moving forward. Even Windows 10 at this point is moving forward. It's arguable about Windows 10 because they're essentially sort of taking the same BlackBerry 10 path by running APK files and iOS files. But whatever, that's aside from the point. They can get more out of Android at this point, seemingly.
Yeah,
You know?
like the other day I was looking, like I own a Pebble. It's like a few people know I have Pebble integration in my apps and stuff, and I know the guy who makes Talk to Watch, which is the native BlackBerry 10 app that gets you Pebble to communicate with your BlackBerry 10 device. And I was using it and stuff, and I love the app. It's great. I love using it on my BlackBerry device. Granted, it is missing some stuff that the Android version has. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, you know what? Like I have my Pebble, and I really like it a lot with my BlackBerry 10. But if I do get Android, I'm really going to be able to get, that full usability of this watch that I have. And not only that, maybe I can get a better watch like Android Wear Watch. And then it got me thinking, it's like, wait, but BBM also has integration with Android Wear, so maybe I'll get a better experience because I mostly use BBM after this whole Android changeover, right? And so it really got me thinking that it's not necessarily all bad if this does pan out. I mean, if there was something to happen, an OS to switch to, there's billions of people who use Android and love it. So I mean, we're not gonna be like desolate people who don't have anything to to use and stuff. I mean, we'll get through it. It's just like it does bring up a lot of questions in terms of security, which is the main sticking point for BlackBerry. It's just I don't know where I stand in terms of protecting my information if I do go Android, and with Apple I also don't know where I stand in terms of my security there as well. And it's just I just kind of feel like there is that void in the market if BlackBerry 10 does end up going.
But what about this? What about this? Okay, because it seems as though that a lot of people have forgotten this. And granted, it's understandable that people have forgotten about it, but BlackBerry worked with Samsung to go ahead and create the Secu tablet. That seems like a pretty secure Android.
Oh, that's true. So they've already secured Android.
Yeah, there's a,
This goes back to your Exynos, conversation where those drivers already exist for that software on chip.
Exactly.
Can they go somewhere else and replicate the same experience outside of Qualcomm and really up the specification? Again, everything we've talked about so far has been leak-based, There's really
and no
nothing
concrete
substantial
info
as of yet. But we are getting there. We're seeing more and more, and I'm sure Chris and myself will be posting up the video of what looks like this Android launcher running on the BlackBerry SE device. So there's definitely some good stuff coming on. I appreciate having everyone on for the conversation about the BlackBerry Venice. We look forward to speaking with you guys next week. Thanks for watching.
Take it easy.
Later.
Peace out.
Hey.